I'll start with a riddle hidden inside a perfectly ordinary word. The word geyser is known on every continent. Scientists use it, school children use it, tourists and writers use it. Yet it comes from just one place. A small northern island lost somewhere between Europe and America. Here, in a valley with the tongue-twisting name of Haukadalr, a hot spring called Geyser bursts from the earth, and it's from that spring that the whole world once inherited this sharp, striking word. The name goes back to an ancient verb meaning roughly to gush forward, and that single forceful image captures the entire character of the country we're about to explore. Great Geyser itself has grown nearly dormant today, sending up water only rarely, like a tired old man resting. But right beside it, its younger neighbor Strokur is still hard at work, hurling a column of boiling water 15 to 20 meters into the air every few minutes, again and again, to the delight of thousands of visitors who come here from every corner of the world. But why does the earth here breathe both heat and water at once? The answer lies deep underfoot. This island had no business rising above the water at all, and the fact that we can walk across it is one of geology's rarest strokes of luck. It sits astride two forces of extraordinary power simultaneously: a long underwater seam that runs the full length of the Atlantic, slowly pulling the continents apart in opposite directions, and at the same time, a vast column of superheated material rising from the deepest interior of the planet. Places where a hotspot coincides with an oceanic ridge are nearly unheard of on Earth, and only because of that rare coincidence did land manage to grow up out of the cold waters. That's why a patch of ground smaller than many ordinary regions contains around 30 volcanic systems, and almost every one of them carries its own story of terror and wonder. One of those mountains is called Hekla, and in medieval Europe, people genuinely believed it was the gateway to hell. They were convinced that the souls of sinners were tormented inside its fiery crater, and stories to that effect spread across the whole continent by word of mouth. In the centuries since people have lived on this island, that mountain has awakened more than 20 times, and every awakening left a deep mark on the collective memory. But the darkest chapter belongs not to Hekla, but to another volcano, Laki. In 1783 and 1784, it split open along a long chain of fissures and poured so much poison into the sky that what followed is still considered one of the most catastrophic disasters in human history. A toxic haze settled over the fields and pastures, poisoning the grass and water, killing up to 80% of all livestock, and hard on the heels of that came a devastating famine. In those years, the island lost around 20% of its population, roughly 10,000 people, and the nation remembered that time forever under the bitter name the Haze Hardships. The lethal cloud didn't stay over the island alone. It drifted all the way to Europe, draping distant cities in a gray pall and reminding everyone that the fate of this tiny scrap of land could reach out and touch an entire continent. After so many upheavals, it seemed as though the earth had finally settled. A peninsula in the southwest, facing directly out to the ocean, had been silent for around 8 centuries, and people had come to regard it as quiet and safe. But in 2021, fire stirred beneath it once more. At first, the earth opened far from any settlement, near a mountain with the complicated name of Fagradalsfjall, and the spectacle felt almost festive. Thousands of people made the journey on foot just to watch new land being born before their eyes. Before long, though, the fire crept closer to where people lived. Near the fishing town of Grindavik, a whole series of eruptions began, and in November of 2023, all of its residents, around 3,790 people, had to be rushed out in the middle of the night. Most of them never returned to their homes. To give the town at least some protection against the molten flows, high earthen barriers were built around it, running about 14 kilometers in length and reaching up to 25 meters in height in places. And those man-made walls still stand in the lava's path today. While the earth was making itself known through fire, the language of this people was quietly preserving the keys to every name on the map. Learn just a handful of short words, and the island starts speaking to you directly. The word Vik means a bay, Fjordur means a narrow sea inlet between cliffs, Dalur means a valley, and Reykjavik means smoke or steam. Put the last two meanings together, and the capital's name suddenly makes sense. Reykjavik literally means smoky bay, named for the steam that rose from hot springs in the time of the very first settlers. This land has its remarkable absences too, things that are almost entirely missing here. So little true forest remains on the island that trees cover only around 2% of its entire area, and locals still joke that if you ever find yourself lost in an Icelandic forest, you just need to stand up straight and everything becomes visible at once. You won't find snakes, lizards, or frogs here, and of all land mammals, only the small Arctic fox is truly native. Both the reindeer and the mink arrived much later, brought by human hands. What's equally striking is how this tiny nation conducted itself in the face of large and powerful neighbors. The country has never had a real army, yet in 1949, it joined a major military alliance as one of its founding members, even though a great many of its citizens wanted nothing more than peace, and the vote sparked a genuine clash right outside the walls of Parliament. And not long after that came something almost unbelievable. A state with no military navy whatsoever managed to defend its waters 3 separate times in drawn-out disputes with mighty Britain. From 1958 to 1976, small Coast Guard vessels boldly sailed out to meet British fishing boats and cut their nets, and in the end the little island won the right to a broad fishing zone around all of its shores. Behind that outward toughness lay the heavy memory of poverty. For long years, from the early 17th century until nearly the end of the 18th, all of the island's trade was controlled by foreign merchants, and this steadily and surely impoverished an entire people. In winter, families gathered around a shared table for an ancient holiday, eating the foods that helped them survive the brutal cold: fish preserved in a special traditional way, smoked lamb, and dried cod, along with a thick fermented dairy product that people here have been making and loving for more than 1,000 years. And yet the calm that lies over this land today is deeply deceptive. Beneath the heavy ice cap of one of the great glaciers, a formidable volcano named Katla is still sleeping, and when the ice begins to melt, glacial floods of tremendous force break free from beneath it, capable of sweeping everything in their path away within hours. This land never truly sleeps, it only pretends to. Let's begin this part with what this people are perhaps most proud of in all the world: their language. While the rest of the world happily borrows foreign words, people here do the opposite, guarding their language against loanwords as though it were a rare treasure. A special committee exists for exactly this purpose, coining names for new things not from foreign roots, but from their own ancient ones. When the first computers arrived on the island, no one reached for the familiar international term. Instead, a new word was assembled from 2 old concepts: the word for number and the word for prophetess, because a machine that calculates and seems to predict the answer does genuinely call to mind an ancient oracle working with numbers. The same approach was taken with the helicopter, giving it a short and vivid name of its own. In this careful, loving treatment of every word, you can see the full character of a people who have firmly decided to remain themselves in a vast and noisy world. This language preserves not only words, but great books as well. Ancient sagas and poems were born here, gathered into old manuscripts that are considered a crowning glory of world literature. One of them is known as the Elder Edda, while the other was compiled and written down by a famous medieval scholar and chieftain named Snorri Sturluson. The troubled fate of these manuscripts speaks volumes in itself. Long ago, they were taken across the sea to Denmark, and for centuries these priceless books were kept far from their homeland. It wasn't until 1971 that they finally began to come home, and for an entire people, every manuscript that sailed back across the ocean was a true celebration, the return of a lost soul. The history of the island itself is also preserved in ancient records. The first person considered to have settled here permanently was a man named Ingolfur Arnarsson, who made his home on these shores around 874, on the very site of the future capital. But it's possible that even before the northern seafarers arrived, solitary Irish monks had been living here quietly, seeking solitude at the edge of the world. All of this is carefully recorded in the Old Book of Settlements, which remains the primary testament to those distant times even today. As early as 930, free inhabitants came together and established their own assembly, one of the earliest parliaments in the world, where people would gather to settle common affairs. It was at one such assembly, around the year 1000, that the people peacefully adopted a new faith, with little bloodshed, agreeing to continue living together rather than go to war with one another over their gods. The country gained its full independence in much more recent times. On the 17th of June, 1944, at that same ancient gathering place, the people solemnly declared complete independence, and nearly everyone voted for it, around 98 out of every 100. Svein Björnsson became the first president of the young nation, and from that day forward, the island began a new, sovereign life. But what truly makes this people remarkable is their commitment to equality. In 1980, something happened here that no country in the world had ever seen before. For the first time in history, a woman was elected head of state by popular vote. Her name was Vigdis Finnbogadottir. This island seemed to be decades ahead of the entire planet, and today the country is once again led by a woman, a president named Halla Tomasdottir, who became the second woman in history to hold that office from 2024. The government, meanwhile, is headed by a young economist named Kristrún Frostadottir, who took office in December 2024. At 37, she became the youngest sitting head of government in the entire world. This land is not only fair, it's remarkably safe. For many years running, the island has ranked first in the Global Peace Index as the most peaceful country on the planet. Serious crimes are so rare that you could count them on one hand over the course of a whole year, and police officers on the streets typically carry no weapons at all, simply because they don't need them. Even names are treated in a very particular way here. Everyone addresses one another by first name only, with no surnames or titles, and even the president is simply called by their first name, like a neighbor. The phone book is also organized not by surname, as it is in the rest of the world, but by first name, and every new name given to a child must be approved by a special committee to ensure it sounds right and fits naturally within the native language. The sky above this island is a wonder all its own. It sits right at the edge of the cold circle at the top of the planet, and that invisible circle touches one small northern island directly. Because of this position, the island sees the breathtaking northern lights rippling across the dark sky in waves of green, and long bright nights in summer when the sun barely sets, and deep darkness during the long winter months. And very soon the island will witness yet another celestial event. On the 12th of August, 2026, a narrow band of total solar eclipse will pass directly over it, and for a few moments in the middle of the day, true night will fall. The island's earthly beauty is every bit as stunning as what's above it. There's a famous circular route that links three wonders in one: the ancient assembly grounds, a valley of hot springs, and a mighty waterfall called Gullfoss. That waterfall nearly disappeared at the start of the 20th century when a power station was planned for the site, but a brave local woman named Sigríður Thomas' daughter stood up to defend it and saved it for all future generations. Further on lie mountains glowing in warm, vivid colors, and the vast bowl of an ancient volcano where, back in the 1960s, future moon explorers trained before their great journey, because these barren landscapes resemble the lunar surface more closely than anywhere else on Earth. And of course, the island's wildlife is unlike anything else. The cold waters surrounding it are considered one of the best places on the planet to see enormous whales with your own eyes, and one small town in the north has even earned the nickname the Whale Capital. On the coastal cliffs, enormous flocks of charming birds with bright beaks nest in great numbers, and the loyal companion of people here is the island's only native dog breed, the Icelandic sheepdog, as hardy and resilient as the land itself. Step by step, a tiny people at the edge of the world manage to preserve their language, their books, their freedom, and their remarkable sense of justice, proving that a country's greatness has nothing to do with its size. We'd like to close our story with what makes this island truly special in the eyes of the world: its relationship with energy. Almost all the light and heat in homes here comes not from coal or oil, but from the earth and water themselves. Vast mountain rivers spin turbines and generate electricity, while hot underground springs warm people's homes, and the majority of houses on the island are heated by warmth rising directly from beneath the planet's surface. This cheap, clean power fuels not only residential neighborhoods, but also large industrial plants, where lightweight metal is smelted, and vast data centers that run day and night. And at one facility here, people have learned to do something truly extraordinary. They capture the harmful gases warming the entire planet and turn them into solid rock deep underground, locking the danger away in stone forever. From this earthly heat come some remarkable feats of everyday life as well. You might think it would be impossible to grow tender southern vegetables on a harsh northern island with so few warm days. And yet on one farm here, under glass roofs, ripe tomatoes and fresh cucumbers grow year-round, even through the darkest winter. They're warmed by that same geothermal heat, and during the long dark months, they're lit by bright lamps that stand in for the sun, so that even in the deepest freeze, true summer reigns inside these greenhouses. Getting around the island is no less fascinating. There are no railways here, and there never have been. No tracks, no trains, no stations of the kind we're so used to. Instead, the whole island is encircled by a single main road that runs along its edge, roughly 1,330 kilometers long. Remarkably, that ring was only completed quite recently, in 1974, when the final bridge across a turbulent glacial river was at last built. Deep into the wild mountain interior, however, the routes are something else entirely. Rough, unpaved tracks where vehicles have to ford actual rivers, because there are no bridges out there at all. The island's capital stands further north than any other capital in the world, and around 2/3 of the country's entire population lives there and in its surroundings, while the rest of the land remains almost empty and wild. And this small people has one more unexpected passion: a love of books. More books are published and read per person here than in almost any other country in the world. And the most heartwarming local tradition is tied to the winter holidays. On one special evening in late December, people give each other books as gifts, and the whole family sits down together to read by soft lamplight, sheltered from the long northern night. This nationwide love of reading has also given the world a great writer whose books were awarded the most prestigious prize in literature all the way back in 1955. But what's truly astonishing is how much music this tiny land produces. For a country with such a small population, It has given the world a remarkable number of celebrated singers and bands whose songs are known on every continent. Their unusual, utterly distinctive melodies seem to carry within them the chill of Arctic winds, the warmth of geothermal springs, and the vast openness of northern skies. And this people loves a certain grand song contest just as passionately as it loves music. The entire country watches it without exception, from the very young to the very old, cheering for their performers as if they were family. The island's relationship with sport deserves a special mention too, because this is where one of the most remarkable miracles in sporting history unfolded. At the 2018 FIFA World Cup, this tiny nation became the smallest country ever to qualify for that tournament among the strongest national teams on the planet. And even before that, its footballers managed to beat England itself at a major championship. And the whole world remembered the famous synchronized clapping of their supporters, thundering through the stands like rolling thunder. The island has also made its name through a very different kind of strength. It has produced several female athletes who were crowned the strongest people on earth at special competitions. And that too is part of the same story. The story of a people who never back down in the face of hardship. The island has some curious habits around food and drink as well. Hard to believe, but ordinary beer was banned here until the 1st of March, 1989, and now residents jokingly mark that day as a proper holiday. Strong spirits are still sold only in special state-run shops, and nowhere else. And the famous Blue Lagoon that visitors from all over the world dream of visiting isn't actually a wild, naturally occurring spring at all. It's a man-made body of water fed by warm runoff from a neighboring power plant, and during turbulent periods of recent volcanic eruptions, it had to be hurriedly evacuated on more than one occasion as danger drew close. A particular source of pride for the island is its approach to gender equality. For roughly 15 years running, this country has ranked first in the world on that vital measure, outpacing everyone else. And it all began with one bold day in 1975, when almost every woman on the island simultaneously refused to work or do household chores. The entire country simply ground to a halt that day, because without women's labor, it became immediately clear what holds all of life together. And their voices have been truly heard ever since. Perhaps that's exactly why the people of this island live such long lives and are considered among the happiest on the entire planet. The best way to close our story is with what reveals the soul of this people most clearly. Volunteer rescue teams operate here, made up of ordinary people who join out of a pure desire to help those in trouble, in any weather, at any hour. People drink the purest glacial water straight from the tap without a second thought for their health. And here's the conclusion. This whole story leads us to: the population of this island is smaller than that of many a single large city, and yet it has its own distinct language, its own great literature, its own music, an energy supply that's almost entirely clean, a celebrated writer, a national football team that beat England, and top rankings in the world's indices of peace and fairness. This small patch of land in the middle of a cold ocean has proved a simple and profound truth to the entire world. The strength of a people is measured not by its numbers, but by its spirit.